We're good.
We're live.
We're bumping. We're pumping. The bass is thumping. And here we go. We're putting on a show. It's called Del Toro. Del Toro Time the Podcast.
Our new intro, everybody.
I have a new theme song. We finally got sued by Edvard Grieg for using In the Hall of the Mountain King. So yeah, here we are. We're going to be talking about a spooky ghosts, or are they? Do you think we're talking about ghosts? I couldn't tell if you were making a face at me or if you were just starting to yawn.
Just trying to yawn quietly.
See, that's good. It's courteous of you. But I'm talking and you're going. Like, I don't know if this is a judgment on your part or if there's something going on physiologically. Also, your video is very choppy, so it's like I'm like, oh no. It's all kinds of issues we're having today. Yeah, we're talking about Ray Bradbury. You have to have read some Ray Bradbury. Fahrenheit 450.
Give me an example.
Fahrenheit 451.
No.
The Martian Chronicles.
The Martian Chronicles?
The Martian Chronicles.
Is that like the entire title?
Yes.
Then no.
The Illustrated Man.
No.
Something Wicked This Way Comes.
I don't think so.
The Golden Apples of the Sun. You didn't read The Golden Apples of the Sun if you didn't read the other ones. Dandelion Wine?
No.
Wow, I can't believe you didn't have to read Fahrenheit 451 in high school. That's like a major,
Is that the one where you set the book on fire afterwards?
I don't think you're supposed to set your copy of... Are you saying you think you're supposed to set a copy of Fahrenheit 451 on fire after you've read it?
Isn't that the one that has the match...
It's about...
box on the side?
It is. I think that there was an artistic version of it that came with that, but not every copy of Fahrenheit 451 is intended to be burnt. It's about book burning.
Yeah, I know.
It's in the future, and people don't want books anymore, so they have firemen who go around and set fire to things that nobody wants anymore.
Yeah.
Yes. People tend to think it's a book about censorship, and it's actually about the dangers of television. Ray Bradbury wasn't concerned about not being allowed to read books. He was concerned about people no longer wanting to read books because TV was easier.
At this point, though, I think the censorship interpretation is much more current.
I think he was right. I don't want to read books. I want to watch TV shows like DuckTales and Unsolved Mysteries.
You read books all the time.
I don't want to read them.
What are we doing right now? We're talking about books.
I only read books because I made the mistake of starting a bunch of podcasts.
I like reading books.
I do. I enjoy reading books. It can get time consuming, but not this week's.
No, this week took me 10 minutes.
Yep, it's a swift read. There's recordings of it.
I literally finished reading it at 11:59.
Yeah, there's recordings of it that are 15 minutes long, and that's like knowing that it takes longer to read a book out loud than it takes to read a book in your head. I think it's a pretty good indication of how short this book is. And even like reviews of it are like, this is a swift read.
I think most books take longer to read out loud than they do to read in my head.
Yes, I think that's the way it works. Hi everyone, I'm Phil.
And I'm Willow.
And it's Del Toro time.
It's Del Toro time.
Did you say that along with me?
Del Toro time. Yep.
Holy crap, our lag really is terrible. I finished saying it's Del Toro time before you started saying it. So
Not to me.
Either our lag is really wild or it's just really inconsistent and like things are like jumping all over the place. Because I said it's Del Toro time and then you went and it's Del Toro time. We will see how this all plays out in the recording and if I need to sync things up a little bit or keep it that way and the audience will be like, their lives are hard. So what can you tell me about Ray Bradbury? Do you think that when he died at his funeral, they said, and now he will be Ray Bradburied?
I hope so.
Do you think his parents were tempted to name him Brad?
Bradbury.
Brad Bradbury. It took you a while. Or
no, it didn't.
It just wasn't that funny. I think Brad Bradbury. Did he have a brother? I wonder if he had any siblings. Did he have any famous siblings?
Google it.
His mother was Esther. His father was Leonard.
Leonard Bradbury.
And he was given the middle name Douglas after the actor Douglas Fairbanks. That's pretty cool. It doesn't say if he had any brothers and sisters. Interesting connection to the Young Goodman Brown episode. He is a descendant of Mary Bradbury, who was tried, convicted, and sentenced to hang as a witch in Salem, Massachusetts in 1692. However, she evaded the sentence until the trials had been discredited, and she died in 1700 at the age of 85. But so a descendant of an accused Salem witch. I think that is very appropriate considering some of the stuff he wrote about. So Ray Bradbury.
She was a witch.
She was a witch. she escaped. She escaped her proper sentencing.
No. She was just a witch.
Like a hedge witch, like a friendly witch, like.
Yeah.
So Ray Bradbury, he was born in 1920. He only died in 2012 at the age of 91. He basically got his start in the world of science fiction fantasy the same way that most of these people did. He started writing for the pulps. He always knew that he wanted to be a writer. He just started pounding away at the typewriter and basically became a professional writer at the age of 21, and just for 70 years he just kept on working, never really stopped. He got into TV, he got into movies, and in the 1980s he had a show on HBO called Ray Bradbury Theater. This is skipping over like every single thing he did in his life, by the way. Ray Bradbury Theater, which adapted a bunch of his stories, including the story that we are covering today. If you have any other questions about Ray Bradbury, want to know anything else about him, I suggest looking at any of the millions of documentaries or books written about this man, who is one of the most famous science fiction fantasists in the history of English letters. He's had so many stories adapted and so many just things inspired by his works that there's just no way I could sit here and list them all. He is just one of the most influential writers in the history of the English language. Ray Bradbury, everybody, had a song written about him called, I can't say the title of it because it has a dirty word in it. Very famous comedy song written about Ray Bradbury. The end. And so what is the story that we're reading today?
The Crowd.
So when we mentioned we were reading The Crowd by Ray Bradbury, you said that's your least favorite thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what does that mean?
It means I hate crowds.
Yeah. You hate crowds more than probably anybody I've ever met. They are a nightmare. They are the worst thing. And so this story, in some ways, is about that, because the people in the story do crowd very close to the face.
Mm-hmm. So I was reading his Wikipedia page to see if I had seen anything of his.
Yeah.
I have not.
You've not. You have no Bradbury experience.
I've only heard of him.
Yeah, I mean, it's a name. You can't go through your life without hearing of Ray Bradbury.
And there was an episode of Criminal Minds where the Illustrated Man played a huge part in it.
Oh yeah? Like someone was covered in tattoos?
Yeah, there was a serial killer who was covered in tattoos who ended his life to protect his kid, and they figured out who he was because of the void in the tattoos.
Oh, well, I would say that that's exactly like reading the works of Ray Bradbury. I would say that having seen an episode of Criminal Minds about a serial killer covered in tattoos, that's a good trade-off. I would say that it's not unlike in English class in high school when instead of reading the Martian Chronicles, we watched the painfully boring 180-hour-long miniseries of the Martian Chronicles, which in no way captured the magic of Ray Bradbury. Ray Bradbury, he lived for 91 years. He wrote a bunch of science fiction and fantasy. Some of his stuff got pretty dark. He liked to focus on things like childhood and nostalgia and looking back on your life and Americana. Something Wicked This Way Comes is probably the preeminent book about that. He influenced writers like Stephen King. He influenced filmmakers like Steven Spielberg. When he died, he had a body of work that was over 70 years in the making, hundreds upon hundreds of short stories and essays, and that was Ray Bradbury. Then he wrote, at one point in his life, he wrote a story called The Crowd, and we read it, The Crowd by Ray Bradbury.
What is the title of this room?
The title of what room?
Why is the meeting title what it is?
What is the meeting title?
Maybe you didn't pick it. Maybe it's just random, but it's ridiculous.
What is it?
Because it looks like an intentional typo.
What is it?
It should say on your search bar or on your website address.
Bedge DDH. I mean, I guess. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how much Willow pays attention to what I'm saying. She was trying to make words out of the random code provided in the search bar of our Google Meet. This is what I'm up against on a daily basis.
This is what my teachers are up against on a daily basis.
That's true. So this is The Crowd by Ray Bradbury. It was first published in Weird Tales in May 1943. Later appeared in his collections The Dark Carnival. It appeared in The October Country. So if you've ever read either of those collections, which are two very famous Ray Bradbury collections, particularly the October Country. If you've picked up the October Country, you have read The Crowd and you're familiar with it. Weird thing about this one is this short story reads like it was intended to be an episode of like The Twilight Zone. It's so short. It only has 2 characters and it's got a little twist at the end, and it kind of tries to prove a little point.
Nothing in this story that happens is something you don't think is going to happen.
Yeah, and it's strangely predictable. Like, I was never like, oh no, I was like, I think I know exactly where this is going from like the jump.
Yep.
So why don't you tell our friends and listeners what exactly happens in The Crowd? You can probably do this in 3 minutes.
A guy gets into a car crash. He notes the faces around him. He gets saved from the car crash. He wakes up in the hospital and tells a bunch of people, wow, that crowd got there real quick. And everyone's like, oh, you, ha 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 ha. That's just time being weird because of the adrenaline.
Yeah.
He starts obsessing over it. As he's obsessing over it, one of his friends is like, hey man, I'm kind of worried about you. And he's like, no, but see, all of these people are the same people that were in all of these crowds. But it's kind of a different story when you look at other places, because then it's different people. And the guy's like, sure, man, whatever you say. I'm going to go to the cops about it. Okay, man. He's like, all right, I'm going to go to the cops. He gets in his car. What's he got in his car? A briefcase full of stuff, showing the connection. As he's in his car, a giant truck comes and hits him. He gets in a crash, and then he dies.
Wait, what happens at the very end?
All of those people are there.
Yes, and he becomes
one of them.
Part of the crowd. Sort of. You assume that's what's going to happen. He thinks that's what's going to happen. That's it. That's literally the story of The Crowd. It gets in and out. So yeah, the guy's name is Spallner. His name is Mr. Spallner, and his friend's name is Morgan. So yeah, those are the only 2 main named characters in this story. Spallner and Morgan. Yeah, and he becomes he sees a couple of other car crashes first, and he talks to his doctor, and his doctor's the one who's like, yeah, he puts the clues together because the crowd forms around him in the beginning while the wheels of his car are still spinning. Because his car, I guess, gets turned over. Yeah. And remember, this is the 1940s. So a car crash was oh my God, there were no minor car crashes. If you crashed into someone, it was a 10,000 pounds of steel, actual glass, and melting rubber and twisted bodies. That's what a car crash always was. So yeah, and they were rarer as well. You didn't see as many car crashes. So they would make the front page of the news. But yeah, so the wheels of his car are still spinning. And that's when he's like, how did they get there? If the wheels of my car wouldn't still be spinning 3 minutes after the crash. So these people were there almost waiting for the crash to happen. Yeah. And then when he dies, as he's dying, there's a whole thing where he overhears a crash and they're like, they moved the body. And you shouldn't have done that. Now the person's going to die. And he's like, yeah, why would you move a person's body? Everyone knows you're not supposed to move an injured person. And then at the very end, he's laying there and they move his body. And that's when he's like, I would have survived this crash, but they moved my spine all around and now I'm going to die. And I think they did it on purpose. They take his briefcase and then he's like, I'm going to become one of the crowd. And that's it. You know what this story reminded me of?
What?
The Whimper of Whipped Dogs. Do you remember that story we read a few weeks ago about the woman? I remember
that story.
The woman who gets killed and everyone's watching. To me, it's in a similar vein where it's kind of tut-tutting and shaking its finger at you all stood around and we all have a tendency.
What else are you supposed to do
to watch
in that
these
situation?
Things. I don't know. It's the 1940s. I guess you couldn't watch the TV. You go catch the latest. Mickey
would they
Mouse
rather
flick.
People just walk away?
I don't know. They're not doing anything. They're actually crowding around and keeping help from getting there. But I guess to me, it's that whole thing of you ever notice that everyone runs out to look at accidents when they happen? And I'm like, yeah, Ray Bradbury, I have noticed that. And how about that airplane food? It's pretty terrible as well. But people love this story. It's a celebrated Ray Bradbury short story.
Why? It's a great story. It's well
written, it is.
It's well done.
It's actually, and it gets in and out, and it doesn't waste your time. You see where it's going immediately, and then it's yep, there you are, the end, on to the next tale, and I appreciate the heck out of that. Because if this had been 1 page longer, it would have been too long.
Yeah.
So one of the things I really liked about this story is that it's based on the idea that when you get a new car, and I know you have no experience with this, But when you get a new car, you suddenly notice on the road every single other person who owns that same car. Well, you were kind of like this with my old car. You used to always point out my car. You're like, there's your car, when we would drive by someone with the same exact car. You always notice that, even if you never would have noticed it before, you would have no reason to.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of plays into like that sense where once he sees these faces, he can't stop noticing these faces. Like it's almost like a curse. Like because he was blessed with this little bit of insight, now it becomes an obsession. Like obviously everybody sees these people. I don't think they're invisible, are they?
No.
Like these are actual people that he notices. But are they ghosts? Are these ghosts?
No idea.
Because he becomes one of them at the end. So are these the ghosts of other people who've died?
I thought they were invisible to the people. I guess not, because the cameras caught them.
Yeah, they're on camera.
But I guess ghosts are caught on camera all the time, technically.
Yeah.
But not in real life. He
engages the use of a clipping service to pull like old car accident photos from different newspapers, and that's how he puts two and two together. But so there was so in 1985, I think, the same year that the Berenstain Bears were on Saturday morning television, there was an episode of Ray Bradbury Theater. July 2nd, 1985. I know why I wouldn't have watched this episode, because I was too busy getting ready for my birthday, my 9th birthday. So it was July 2nd, 1985.
Isn't your birthday later than that?
Yeah, but I would have been getting ready for it. My birthday would have been a week and a half later.
How long does it take you to get ready for a birthday?
Well, you got a party to plan. You just got the excitement. Like you're all keyed up. You're ready. I guess
I don't have the same experience with birthdays that you do.
No. Plus, I mean, who even knows what movies were opening then? I know exactly what movies were opening then. The day after this episode dropped, Back to the Future opened.
Oh, nice.
So Ray Bradbury Theater's the crowd. So I would have been too excited because I would have known that I was going to go see Back to the Future very soon. Or maybe I was excited about the release of Silverado or Explorers or Day of the Dead.
Or maybe, and just maybe, you didn't want to watch this show.
Maybe I didn't know the show was even on. I do know that the movie, I now know that the movie Loose Screws opened July 19th of 1985. Now, an interesting thing about the movie Loose Screws, I watched this with my friend Sam late at night on cable. We were looking for movies to watch that had nudity in them because that's what kids did. We scoured the movie listings to see what was coming up, and if it said if it had the letter N in parentheses after it, we knew that there would be nudity. And so whenever I spent the night at his house, we would try to watch grown-up movies, and Loose Screws was one of them that had a lot of it was just a boob comedy, and then I think it culminated in a some sort of topless contest, but we didn't get to stay up late enough to watch it, so we actually recorded it, and he set the timer wrong and it cut off the ending. So to this day, I've never seen the end of Loose Screws. I don't know if the heroes of the movie actually got to the topless contest. But I do know that the theme song to a movie that I haven't seen since I was probably 11 years old went, loose screws. It went, loose screws breaking away. That's all I remember. That's actually all I remember about that movie.
It has another name as well.
Screwballs 2?
Yeah.
Apparently it was unofficially released as Screwballs 2, I guess. But I only ever knew it as Loose Screws.
It's a sequel to Screwballs.
Yeah, it didn't say that in the movie. It just called it Loose Screws. I have more to say about Loose Screws, Screwballs 2, than I do about The Crowd by Ray Bradbury. So, so it was an episode of Ray Bradbury Theater starring Nick Mancuso as Joe Spallner and R.H. Thompson as Morgan. Nick Mancuso is actually a very famous actor. This
seems like a not good movie.
It was, from what I've seen, I didn't sit through the whole thing because it's 20 minutes long, and I don't have that kind of patience anymore. It's exactly the same story, more or less, except that in the end, instead of Spallner dying, he accidentally hits Morgan with his car and kills his friend
I was talking about
Morgan.
Screwballs still.
Oh. He kills his friend Morgan with his car accidentally, and he sees the crowd gather around Morgan, and then he sees Morgan become one of them. And that's literally it. But what's interesting is that Ray Bradbury actually wrote the screenplay, the teleplay for this. And when they asked him why he changed the ending, he said, it's just one of those things that for whatever reason happens when you're writing. I didn't think about it. I just did it. Like, that's it.
Fair enough.
So that's it. That's literally all I have to say about The Crowd. However, Loose Screws, Screwballs 2 from 1985, was directed by Rafal Zielinski, who also went on to direct. He had directed Screwballs. He also directed a movie called Screwball Hotel, which I guess is a sequel to Screwballs. I've never heard of it. He directed a couple episodes of The Highlander, and he is still working today, I guess. But he's mostly known for the movies Fun, Baba, and Ginger Ale Afternoon. Did you ever watch a movie you weren't supposed to watch when you were a kid, Willow?
Every movie you showed me.
No, I mean that I wasn't supposed to, that I didn't deliberately show you. I'm not talking about like Terminator 2.
No, I don't think so.
You never snuck a movie with a friend? You did
Where
watch
would
those,
I do that?
You did watch those scary movies at that cabin, but you didn't
Yeah, but
do
I didn't
that.
sneak those movies.
Yeah, they were just shown to you.
Against my will.
Right. Oh, I see. So this movie is a Canadian movie. Screwballs 2 is a Canadian movie, so they may have changed the title for the American release. But the Los Angeles Times said the film was the formula in excelsis. The only real difference is that it has been pushed further than usual. One of the hallmarks of Roger Corman, whose Concord Pictures released it, you expect more from Corman. The movie is single-mindedly prurient, and scenarist Michael Corey has come up with the lewdest language this side of Hustler. Almost every line in this movie is either unprintable or a double entendre.
It just seems like a movie about sexual harassment to me.
I mean, that's every teen sex comedy from the 80s. If you're lucky if they stop at sexual harassment. What is the plot to this movie? Oh my
I don't
god!
want to talk about it.
One of the characters is named Marvin Eatmore. Okay, that's it. I am canceling our podcast. I am starting an entirely Screwballs based podcast. Would it help you if I told you that the character whose last name is Eatmore was the fat character?
Oh my god, so funny.
Would that help explain more of the movie? I don't remember this. I watched it with my friend Sam.
When you were 11.
We were too young for this. I mean, I think that's the same character. I tried to find more information on it. It took me to an article about a completely different movie. Trust me, though, when I was a kid, sneaking Screwballs 2 loose screws was like the height of like getting away with something.
How do you sneak a movie?
Okay, so it came on cable late at night. So what I think happened was he set this timer and we recorded it onto videotape. And then we went to bed. Like, we didn't watch it that night. He recorded it. When we woke up in the morning, he was like, "It's here. We got it. It's secured." And then we probably like watched it in his bedroom that day, like on a VCR, or like I spent the night at his house the next night. Like, this was my friend Sam. I spent the night at his house a lot. So we probably just watched it the next night and we're like,
but how do you sneak a movie? I don't understand. I guess I just don't live in big enough houses.
His parents didn't know we were watching it. Like, we watched it. Oh, his parents would go to bed like at 9 or 10. And then we'd go downstairs and just hang out all night in the den.
See, there's the problem. I don't go to houses that are more than one floor.
Right. So we would just hang out in the den. The parents would be upstairs in their bedroom asleep. And this was expected. Like, we stayed up all night anyway. And so that's how we watched Loose Screws. When we were way too young. I may not have been 11. I may have been 12. 11 or 12. It was definitely junior high.
I just don't know how to sneak a movie because I've never felt the need to.
I mean, watching movies you're not supposed to is one of those things kids do. It wasn't like weird that we did this. Like, this is also how I first saw The Toxic Avenger.
I guess I was just a goody two-shoes then because I never did this.
You were a goody two-shoes, or maybe I just never gave you any reason to think that there was like a reason you would have to do this. Or maybe your mom never did. Like, we were pretty loose with what we like allowed you to watch. Like, if you wanted to watch something, I can't imagine you being like, there's no way they'd never let me watch this. And I bet if you had asked and we had said no, you would have just been like, fine.
Yeah, that's what happened with Pan's Labyrinth.
I now have Screwballs 2 Loose Screws playing on my computer. It's exactly 13 seconds in, and it's already offensive. It's literally less than a half a minute into the movie, and I'm like, this is terrible. Oh, and now it's getting worse. It's not even a minute into the movie. It's now at the 31-second point, and I've already seen the worst thing I can imagine. Okay, the large man character, Eatmore, is in. He's wearing a T-shirt that says, I eat anything on it. That he obviously
Wow, they really hit the nail on the head with that one.
He's spying on the cheerleaders in their cheer thing, and they know he's spying, so they just flashed him their underpants, and they wrote, eat shit on their underpants at him. I'm going to have to bleep that out, but I just wanted you to know that this is the type of movie. I'm not even going to say this is teen sex comedy regular. I'm going to say this is Canadian comedy.
I'm going to say it's sexual harassment and leave it at that.
I'm going to say this movie should be banned from all platforms. It's certainly not the worst movie that's ever been made, but it's definitely a crime.
Yeah.
It's definitely
what were we even supposed to be talking about this episode?
Ray Bradbury, who, you know what? This story we read there's not a whole lot to say about it.
No.
Guess what? People like to see car accidents, and then they harass you after you die.
Remember when we were driving, we were driving to Texas and we passed the car that was on fire under the bridge?
We did pass the car that was on fire under the bridge. In fact, for several years after that happened, that's all you would talk about as far as that's all you remembered from that trip. That's all I remember from that trip. That's all you remember from that trip was the fact that we passed a flaming car under a bridge.
Yep.
So yeah, it was also a very long car ride.
One of my core memories.
It was a very long car ride.
It was I hated it.
Yeah. So yeah, Screwballs 2.
I'd enjoy it now because I like being in the car.
Would you? Would you enjoy a 20-hour car trip now?
I enjoyed the car trip or the bus trip to DC from here.
Did you enjoy the car trip to the house on the rock?
That was because Mitzi was in the car. Why would I enjoy that?
Well, if we drove down to Texas all together, Mitzi would be in the car.
I'm not saying I would enjoy the car ride with you guys.
So you're not saying you would enjoy that car ride now. You're saying you would enjoy a 20-hour car ride now.
Yes.
Okay. Not that specific car ride.
Yeah.
We stopped in Kansas City. We got very fancy chocolates.
I wouldn't be able to eat those now.
Why? Because you don't eat chocolate.
Because I don't like chocolate because it would make me feel sick to my stomach.
Chocolate makes you feel sick to your stomach?
Yeah.
Well,
that's why I don't like it.
I know what not to buy you now. Fanciest chocolates.
The only type of chocolate I eat is Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, and that's because it's worth it.
Is it? Why don't you just buy a jar of Reese's Peanut Butter?
Why would? Because it's not the same. I don't want peanut butter.
It's Reese's Peanut Butter. It's the type of peanut butter that's inside the cookies.
Yeah, but the chocolate adds to it.
Does it?
Yeah.
I forgot that Loose Screws was still on, and I clicked over to the tab, and it's still the worst movie that's ever been created. There isn't a part of this movie. I'm just clicking randomly up and down the timeline for it. I haven't seen anything that looks like it's not made by sociopaths. This is the sequel to Screwballs. I shudder to think what Screwballs was, because it's all the same filmmaker. Mm-hmm. It might surprise you to learn that a lot of this movie takes place on a beach and on a golf course.
Great.
I'm assuming that. I'm just sort of seeing the little thumbnails up and down the timeline here. I see that there's part of it is subtitled, which probably means there's some sort of offensive foreign language joke in here as well.
Yep.
Yeah, Screwballs. Interesting fact about Loose Screws, Screwballs 2, not written by Ray Bradbury. Do you have anything to say about The Crowd by Ray Bradbury?
Not really.
Yeah, I feel like we let our listeners down.
That's part of the problem with it, though. I think that it's a good story. It's just not a discussion story.
It's not. It's pretty much, it is what it is. It gets its point out of the way. There's no characters. The main character isn't a character. Just something happens to him, and he goes and investigates. His best friend is just there to be a sounding board. He does literally nothing and has no personality. And then it's over. Hi, everybody. This is The Dark Descent collection of horror stories by David G. Hartwell. In the intro to this, he actually does compare it to The Whimper of Whipped Dogs. He says, interesting to compare The Crowd to The Whimper of Whipped Dogs. And I will say that it does sort of feel like, I already said it. It has that sort of just like tut-tut feel, like isn't society like the worst feel to it.
Yeah, it's so much less exploitative, and there's so much less to talk about with it, because it's not like, and then a demon came from the sky and ripped a man apart, and then the woman became what she hated the most.
Right.
It's just, and then the guy was hit by a car, and he died alone and sad.
He died alone and sad, and he became part of the crowd. Don't we all eventually become part of the crowd? And I'm going to let you in on a little secret. You want to hear a little secret?
Yeah.
Ray Bradbury's never been one of my favorite writers. I know that's
Nice.
What? What? Did you say nice?
Are you saying what? I said nice, yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I wasn't sure if that's what you actually said. Ray Bradbury was never one of my favorite writers. He just never really clicked for me.
Oh, I thought you said he was one of your favorite writers. You cut out slightly.
Oh no, he has never been one of my favorite writers. I know that's kind of blasphemous as far as people are concerned, but he just never clicked. Like his writing just never clicked. It never clicked for me.
It just seems very cynical to me.
He's not. I mean, he's not. He's a bit of a romanticist, actually, and he loves looking back on child. I mean, like, think of the Stephen King stories that are the most about like how wonderful childhood was, and we can never like. Ray Bradbury plays into that quite a bit.
What Stephen King stories are about anything being wonderful ever?
You know, though, like Stephen King has a lot of romance for his past and for growing up and that time of life. That's when we're at our purest. That's when like we're at our least like cynical and our most open to the wonders of the world and the terrors of the world. And Bradbury does that a lot too. Something Wicked This Way Comes is all about that. And I do like Something Wicked. It's an interesting story. But yeah, he's just never been like, I would never put him on my top list. I'm not saying he's bad, obviously. I'm just saying that like I just never was one of those. He just never like he just wasn't for me.
I guess for me, as soon as someone starts talking about the dangers of television, I just am turned off from them.
Well, there you go. Because as we all know, the only dangerous thing that can happen with television is that you're watching a talk show and then Freddy Krueger's on the talk show and then Freddy Krueger grabs you through the TV and says, "Welcome to prime time, B-word." And then he pulls your head through the television and then you die from the television. That's the worst thing that can happen.
You know what? That would be fine. It'd be better than watching the presidential debate.
Yeah. Sorry to get all political on you, listeners.
I don't think anyone from any side of politics can claim that was fun to watch.
Welcome to prime time, B-words. That's what they should have said at the beginning of the presidential debate. They should have
just had Freddy Krueger come through and kill everyone who was watching it.
I was going to say they should have had Freddy Krueger moderated. Because it would have been the same.
Maybe something would have gotten done.
All right, Mr. President.
I'm trying to do a Freddy Krueger impression. It just sounds like a Jesse Ventura impression. Okay, Willow, what is our next book in The Dark Descent? Our next story. I can tell you right now, it is not a Ray Bradbury. I can tell you right now, it is not anyone from the golden age of science fiction. I can tell you right now, it is no one who ever wrote for Weird Tales. Wow, that's a big book. What is the next short story in The Dark Descent? Willow, what is it?
The Autopsy by Michael Shea.
The Autopsy by Michael Shea. And I'm interested. I mean, I have read some Michael Shea. I read one of his novels, actually. He did a sequel to The Color Out of Space that I read called The Color Out of Time. I mean, he's written a lot of Lovecraftian stuff, so I'm curious as to if this stuff gets Lovecraftian. But it says right there, the story uses some of Lovecraft's conventions. This Color of Evil, The Dark Descent, came out long before Michael Shea died. He did die a few years ago. But I'm curious to read this one. I'm not going to look up anything else about it yet because I want to know. Michael Shea is another writer who I've liked a lot of his stuff, and some of his stuff I'm just like, I don't know. I guess it was fine. He's an interesting writer. So let's see. Let's get ready for some of the dark underbelly of society. I'll leave it at that. If it's typical Shea.
He died when he was 67 years old.
Yeah, he died young. He had quite a life. I'm glad this is a story that I have not. They've done quite a few of his stories over on the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast, and when they've done his stories, they've had Patton Oswalt on as a guest because Patton Oswalt's like a major endorser of Michael Shea's work. So interesting little like crossover there. So I'm interested in seeing this one. I do not believe this one's been covered by them, so we'll be going in fresh. The Autopsy by Michael Shea. Willow, do you have anything to say to our listeners? Any words of encouragement in these troubled times?
Vote.
One word, vote. Have you voted yet?
No, I haven't, because we're waiting. I'm going in person because I don't trust the mail because everything's terrifying.
we have voted in advance. We did not mail our ballots in. We're taking them to the election office.
Yeah, we're going to go vote in person on the 27th of October.
Yeah, try to save this beleaguered country. A madman in a mask.
Did
you see him?
So scared.
Did you see him when he got out of the hospital and he stood on his balcony like Ava Perón and he took off his mask and he was breathing heavier than a 11-year-old boy watching Loose Screwballs 2?
No, I didn't, because I'd try to avoid him at this point.
You should avoid him at all costs. He looks like a dying Five Nights at Freddy's character at this point. He looks like Golden Freddy.
That's an insult to Golden Freddy.
I say this as a man who owns a Golden Freddy action figure, so.
Yeah. I don't even have words to describe how I feel right now.
Okay, we have this 30-minute episode has gone way on too long. Let's say goodbye to our good friends and listeners.
Goodbye, all one of you.
Goodbye to our friends and listeners. I know there's a few of you out there. If you are a listener and you want to say hi, go over to our Twitter page at Del Toro Time, I think it is, and say hello. Or you can find me on Twitter at P. Corey Gonzalez. You can shout at me there. Can our listeners shout at you anywhere?
You can also find me on Twitter. I can't remember what my @ is right now. I know it's Randy, but I don't know how many A's are in it.
Is there any place else they can contact or look at you or find you?
You can find me on Instagram.
That's right.
At a singular gay.
That's right. With like some like underscores.
There's underscores between each word and nothing is capitalized.
That's right. _singular_gay.
Gay.
I'm on Instagram too, but I never do anything. I'm mostly a Twitter guy. So find us there.
I'm also on Instagram and I never do anything. My last post was from June 2nd.
You should start posting more. Post pictures of yourself reading the stories.
No.
Be like, literary update. Hashtag literature of Instagram.
I'm a hideous monster. Why would I do that?
That's how I feel about myself. All right, we are going to go. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for everything. And I'm Phil.
And I'm Willow.
And we'll see you when it's Del Toro time.
Del Toro time.
That was so off again. What is this nightmare we're living in?